Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and you already know that I'm very excited to be here with you today because I tell you every single day that I'm excited to be here with you today. And every single day, it is absolutely true. I know that it sounds like it's some kind of scripted thing, but it really just naturally comes out from me when I'm talking because it's true. I really do just get so excited here. And I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing today, and no matter what life is serving up to you today, right? Whether it's all a big bowl of cherries that are yummy and delicious, or it's a whole bunch of curveballs, not knowing where things are going, not knowing which way is up. We've all been there. We have all had that feeling before. And so, in whatever extreme that you're living today or anywhere in between, okay, I just want to remind you that if you can be present with what's happening, right, not worrying about the outcomes, not, thinking about what got you here and regretting that and all that kind of stuff, but instead just staying right here, right now with what is happening, you are able to accept what is happening right here and right now, and you're able to have compassion in your heart and curiosity in your mind. Well, then those are the things that it takes to get through whatever challenges we might be experiencing. And I do mean any challenges, right? I talked to you a couple of weeks ago here about, a post that I put on Facebook talking about this kind of thing and how people were replying and asking, well, what about, war-torn areas of the world or extreme poverty or people who have experienced, abuse and assault? And it's the same logic. It really does apply. Now, of course, suffering all happens differently, right? Not everyone in the world suffers the same way. Not everyone has the same circumstances. Not everyone has the same abilities and kind of resources to help them out of times of difficulty, right? So it's by no means to undermine what people go through, okay? Especially people who are, experiencing very extreme levels of poverty or other very extreme circumstances in their lives, right? The pain is absolutely real and the suffering is also real, but the suffering is to a certain extent within your control. Right. And that, again, that applies whether you're talking about suffering in a traffic jam or suffering in a natural disaster like our people down in Texas have been doing for the last week or so. It really is. I mean, there's pain and there's damage. And those are things that have to be dealt with, right? You can't avoid those things, right? You can't avoid the damage done to a life through extreme poverty, through assault or whatever other really heavy circumstances. You can't eliminate pain from those situations. It's true, right? And to a certain extent, that pain is going to involve some level of suffering, but the suffering is almost always, whether we're talking about a traffic jam or we're talking about a natural disaster or we're talking about a war-torn country on the earth where people are living, the same logic applies that the suffering can be either exacerbated or it can be reduced or even eliminated through the 4 points that I just mentioned, those points being presence, acceptance, compassion, and curiosity. It's not easy necessarily, right? And again, I really want to be very, very careful that we're not trying to undermine what people go through, right? But that doesn't change the fact that we all have this power within us. Now, hopefully, most of the people who are listening to this podcast are not dealing with natural disasters and life-threatening situations and things of this nature, right? Hopefully it is just the traffic jams and the child meltdowns and the daily, troubles that we have in our lives. But understand that the relativity there is important also, right? Because, I never grew up in a war-torn region of the world, right? So a traffic jam to me, is a different kind of suffering from what they would, from what people would experience in a war-torn region of the world, right? But that doesn't make my traffic jam any less difficult for me. Right. And that's where these 4 points kind of become, kind of a guidepost, a roadmap for your life. right? That if you can live in every circumstance with presence, with acceptance, with compassion, and with curiosity, well, then generally speaking, you're going to be relatively free from suffering, and you're going to be relatively able to really show up to your life. And in all likelihood, you, like me, are going to find yourself happy for absolutely no reason, right? It's not something that's, missing that's making you unhappy, and it's not something that's presence that's making you happy, except for yourself, right? Like, you being present is making you happy, and that's really the only thing. All right. So yesterday we talked about this work and how it helps us to, or how it's really kind of, structured around the idea of establishing and cultivating a level of self awareness, right? And especially this is especially true when it comes to the emotional reactivity that we all experience at times, right? Which that alone is often the root of the suffering that we experience, right? And again, like, let's take a very simple example of like getting stuck in a traffic jam, right? If you get stuck in a traffic jam, there's no way out of it, right? Your next exit is 2 miles up the road. You're completely surrounded by cars. There's no way for you to get out, right? So that's the situation, right? That's the setting. That's the scene here, right? So now you have choices, right? You can either allow your emotions to take over and to get the better of you. Yes, you're angry that you're not getting to your destination. Maybe you're going to miss a flight. Maybe your child is waiting to be picked up and they're going to be scared. Maybe you have a big meeting at work that you're going to be late for. There are reasons for you to be, emotionally triggered by what's happening. And it's okay to feel that, right? It's okay to have that notion. Self-awareness allows you to see that emotion as it's brewing, as it's arising. And that will allow you to not be so reactive. So again, let me go back. I'm sorry, I digress. But so you're stuck in this traffic jam, right? And you're feeling the emotions of fear and anger and all kinds of other things that are coming up, right? Because you're stuck in this traffic jam, and whoever's waiting for you, whatever's at the other end of this thing is going to be a problem, right? And so you're feeling those emotions coming, right? Now you have two choices, right? You can either act out on those emotions, right? You can bang your fist on the steering wheel or on the dashboard. You could just growl and sit there and stew and just like feel the steam coming out of your ears, right? Or you could simply accept what is happening, right? You can accept the fact that for whatever reason and for whose ever fault and under whatever circumstances, this is the reality right now. You're stuck in this traffic and there's nothing you can do to get out of it. Now you can take at that point you can take let me before I get into that, let me not digress again. So what's the difference between these two? One's really a reaction, the other's a response, right? But what's the difference between these two responses that you're giving, right? The first is you're banging your fist on the steering wheel and getting all angry and stressed and feeling all that rage and tension, right? And the other is you're keeping yourself calm because you know that there's nothing that you can do, right? What's the real difference? I mean, aside from how you feel, which is going to be very, very, of course, very different. But of course, we don't necessarily. I'm going to get into that in a second. But aside from the way that you feel as a result of these two emotional responses, what is really the difference, right? Well, I'll tell you first. What's not different is the traffic. Right? The traffic is still the traffic, right? The screaming child is still the screaming child. Whatever it is that's going on is still whatever it is that's going on, right? Your reaction to it, as opposed to a response, is only going to create more difficulty for you to deal with it. And so let me get back to what I was about to say a minute ago, right? If if I'm stuck in this traffic jam and I'm able to remain calm, right? Knowing that there's nothing I can do, right? Like, this is it. I'm stuck here and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And so now I have accepted it And now I can be compassionate towards myself. Like, yes, I had no way of knowing that this traffic was going to be here. I did my best to leave as early as I could. There was no chance of me knowing this ahead of time. And so I shouldn't blame myself, right? And now if I can allow curiosity to come in, now I can really think about what's going on. And now I can make the decision like, hey, I can pick up the phone, I can call into the meeting, I could call my kid's school, I could handle this to at least a certain degree and mitigate the inconvenience of this traffic that I'm in. But here's the thing. if we're not in a position of calm, right? That first scenario that I drew up, the person slamming their fist on their steering wheel and shouting and sweating and just getting all upset, right? That person's body is so deeply in the stress response that it's going to take 20-30 minutes to get out of it. And that's only once that person starts to accept what's going on, right? So the clock keeps ticking until or the clock doesn't start ticking, the meter doesn't start running until you start to accept and get past that thing that's stressing you out. So it could be hours before that person is out of the stress response. And we know, because we talk about it all the time, we know that the stress response does really, really negative things to our ability to think and to our ability to be creative and our ability to cope and to idealize and to logic our way out of a circumstance, right? So in other words, that person who's all enraged like that, well, they actually physically can't really pick up the phone and effectively deal with the situation that's coming. Now, most likely, if you're like I used to be, when you pick up the phone, you'll just scream at someone, right? You'll take it out on some secretary or something like that, right? Or some employee of your kid's school, right? You'll scream because you're angry, right? And of course, that is only going to create another feedback loop that's going to, create more of this thing that we're dealing with. So you see how that emotional reactivity, and that's the thing, that is a reaction, that is not a response, right? That automatic just blow up, right? That's a reaction. And that reaction is going to result in your inability or at least less ability to actually function and actually do something that will mitigate the inconvenience of what you're dealing with. So I hope you understand how that works, okay? Because that's really, really important here. That once we get to that place of reactivity and we're in that anger place and that stress place, well, the best thing you can do at that point is literally like turn around and go home, right? And just call in sick. I mean, get a taxi to pick up your child, because really in that state, you are only going to make things worse until you are able to regulate yourself and speak calmly and kindly to people around you and organize your thoughts, right? Because most of you who are listening to this, I'm sure that because you listen to it so often, I'm sure that you share this kind of affliction with me and with many, many other people in the world, right? That when you get to that place of ragey, reactivity, it's literally like you can't even organize your thoughts, right? The thoughts are just barreling through your mind like a freight train, and it's just coming so fast and so hard and so, just chaotic that it's impossible to even organize the thoughts. So if you can't organize your thoughts, how do you possibly think that you're going to actually solve a problem, right? You are as unlikely or unable to solve a problem as somebody who's like high on drugs or something, right? It's the same thing. You're completely detached in that time. And again, that detachment is going to keep happening until you are able to accept what's going on and start the process of calming yourself down. So again, this could take hours. It might even take days for some people. I sure as heck was one of those people at one point in my life where it would take literally days for me to calm down from situations like that. I mean, maybe not just a simple traffic jam, but but the thing is, it doesn't stop with the traffic jam, right? Because again, you're gonna pick up the phone and you're gonna try to mitigate the situation, but you're gonna make it worse because you're gonna, snap at somebody on the phone, or you're gonna say something that's not the smartest thing to say, right? And you're gonna know that in hindsight, not in the moment, but then it's too late. And at that point, you're going to go from one drama to the next, to the next, to the next. And that way it doesn't seem like it was all just because of this one traffic jam, right? It just seems like it's a series of events that happened. But I'm telling you that it is because of the traffic jam, because you went into that reactive place in the traffic jam, that impacts the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So if you had been able to do the latter, right, keep yourself calm and regulated and present and accepting and compassionate and curious, well, then those next things would not have happened the way that they do when you get into that angry situation. But unfortunately, you would never know that. Right? Just like I would never have known that because I was always in that place of anger and reactivity. I was always in that place of stress. That's the thing about chronic stress. It happens every day, right? So that's why we need to break ourselves out of that. We need to practice, and we need to practice a specific set of skills that are all going to allow us to be more self-aware. Pardon me. Now, what does self-awareness have to do with this? Why is it so important to be aware, right? It might seem to you like I'm saying, well, you want to be self-aware so you can really feel that anger. You can really, feel it and see it for all it's worth, But that's not what I mean. I have a feeling you knew that's not really what I mean. But what I mean by self-awareness, and why self-awareness is so vitally crucial to this process of regulation and turning reactivity into response, because the difference between reaction and response is very, very crucial. The reaction is immediate. It's thoughtless. It's reflexive. There's no contemplation whatsoever. There's no weighing out of the pros and cons and and the impact on others. None of that stuff exists in reactivity. Reactivity is just boom, just do it, right? Whereas response is the opposite. It's all of those things that I just said that reactivity is not. Response contains, right? Response is contemplative. Response is measured. Response takes empathic understanding, to the effect that this decision is going to have on everybody else. And response also allows for some compassion to be involved, to know not only how it's going to impact someone else, but to change that thing that I'm going to do so that it positively impacts others around me, right? And so the difference is very, very crucial. And so in order to get us from that reaction to that response, why is self-awareness so important to that process? Well, I'm going to tell you, right? Because the thing is that we don't go from, even though it might seem that way, right? We don't go from zero to enraged in a second. It doesn't happen that quickly. It can happen pretty quickly for sure, but there is a process that happens, that gets us from the time where we got in the car and we're cruising down the road feeling good about everything, and then boom, we're stuck in this traffic jam, right? There's a process involved, right? Now, of course, no, let me get to that in a second. The process, though, the emotion starts very, very small. Okay, the emotion starts with just one little thought, one little emotion. Boom, that's just this little tiny thing. And when we have a heightened level of self-awareness, now we can see that little emotion when it's happening, right? Because when we get to that rage place, we missed all those little emotions, right? They just happened without our noticing them. right? Why? Because we're probably stuck in our thoughts and everything else, and that's also part of this, of course. But the self-awareness is to say, okay, wait a second, I'm in this situation, and this is where I'm going to, I'm about to lose it. This is the situation where I am going to, get into my stress response, and I'm going to get into my anger and my rage, and I'm going to cause all these other problems, right? Like noticing it even maybe before you even get that first emotion, right? That's how well we can kind of sidestep these things if we have the awareness, right? And you can only have awareness when you're paying attention, right? And you can only pay attention to what's happening in the present moment when you are in the present moment, when you're not distracted by the thoughts of the future and the past, and you're here in the present moment, and you're accepting what's happening in the present moment. Otherwise, you're going to be reacting to those things that happen because you're not accepting it. All right. But here's the thing that really kind of brings this full circle, right? Is because you might be thinking, like, when I said a minute ago, like, well, if I know that I'm getting stuck in traffic and then this is a trigger point for me, right? Well, then the next logical step or the next logical thought from that is, well, then I can just stop driving, right? I can just take the train everywhere I'm going. There's no, and that way I won't ever get into that situation, right? Art, is that what you're saying? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying, because that is changing our life based on our reactivity. What we'd much rather do is change our reactivity based on our life. Right? The objective here is not to hide from these emotions. The objective is not to hide from the situations that create the emotions. Because that means that you're living a life that is not very full. And just in that process of saying, well, I might get into a traffic jam today, so I shouldn't go out, right? Like even in that process, you're now all, right there, you're no longer in the present moment. Right? And so that's not the answer. The answer is by developing this level of self-awareness. What naturally arises from this is even before we have the self-regulation, because again, the self-awareness allows us to see the things in such minute detail that it becomes very easy to regulate them, right? That's why it's not like you're building a skill of regulation of some sort, some kind of magic Harry Potter spell that you're going to say, or some kind of, wear a certain shirt or something like that. No. The regulation happens because you're handling something that is much smaller. Right, so like a Rottweiler, right, is a huge dog. It could literally kill a man or a woman or a person, right? But not when it's a little baby puppy. Right? When it's a little baby puppy, I can pick it up in my arms. I can put a little basket and carry it around with me if I want to, right? I can do anything I want with that puppy. Right? But once it grows into a full-grown Rottweiler, and if it's trained to hurt people, well, you better watch out. That thing could kill you. But not when it's a puppy, right? So that's what we're doing. We're seeing the emotions when they're little puppies. And when we can say, oh, look at this cute little anger I have. Oh, let me hold it. Let me cuddle it for a little bit and see what happens. Right? But really what happens once we get to that point where our self-awareness allows for that self-regulation, what comes out of that? This is the magic here, folks. What comes out of that is a beautiful, natural, homegrown, organic self-confidence, right? Because if I know that I'm going to be able to see my whole trigger mechanism when it's small enough, when it's just a puppy and I can just pick it up and put it in my pocket and keep on going with my day, right? Well, then I don't have to be worried about anything, right? Because I know that I have that ability. And the ability, again, it's not like I know some kind of trick to manage this stuff. It's just that I can see it when it is very, very small and poses no threat. And that's the key, folks. That really is. And so that self-confidence that arises from this self-awareness and the ability to regulate myself, right, which is, again, the same thing, right? The self-confidence that arises from that allows me to walk into any situation, knowing that I will be able to regulate myself in the face of whatever comes at me. So I don't have to avoid people. I don't have to avoid circumstances. I don't have to avoid traffic. I don't have to avoid air travel. I don't have to avoid any of that stuff. Right. And again, and this confidence is going to it's going to spill over into all the different areas of my life. Right. Like I can have the same confidence when I'm meeting with a business, person, or like a potential client, or or a senior level person in my corporation, whatever it is. Right. That same self-confidence is going to come through just because you have that self-awareness that allows you to regulate. So it's like knowing that you can handle any situation. And so how long does it take to develop this self-confidence? Well, I'm almost afraid to tell you because it's so silly and it happens so quickly. The rule of thumb is, based on research, based on, brain scan, neuroscientific research, right? The rule of thumb is 20 minutes per day, 8 weeks, right? Meaning that if you're able to put in 20 minutes every day, just 20 minutes every day, that at the end of 8 weeks, your brain is already showing the plasticity to change this stuff on a real foundational level. Right? Does that mean you're going to be an expert in 8 weeks? Not quite. But will you notice the difference? Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it happen dozens of times over the last few years that I've been working with people. And it's amazing. And it happens the same way with everybody. Everybody takes a little bit of a different route. Everybody prefers a little, different practices. That's why I have so many of these practices that I help people with. I have probably about, 10 different modalities that I can help you with, right? So we'll try one. If that one doesn't work, I'll give you a different one. I'll see, based on your person and the struggles that you're having, I've never missed, not once. I've always got something in my toolbox for everyone. And so we'll all take different routes. We'll all use different types of practices. We'll all, maybe have different stumbling blocks and everything else. And some people, it won't happen in just 8 weeks. Maybe it's 12 weeks. Maybe it's 16 weeks. The point is, though, that for everyone, we all arrive in the same place. And again, it's just because of presence, acceptance, compassion, and curiosity. And those practices lead to these vital skills. So let me teach you how to do this. All right. If you're interested, seriously, artburnscoaching.com. Go at the bottom of every page. There's a banner with a big clock on it. Click on the button in the banner. You go into my calendar program. You pick out a day and a time that works for you. And I mean, this is, I don't know how much longer I'll be able to offer these calls because my schedule is really filling up. So, which is a good thing. I mean, it's good for me, but I really want as many people out there to benefit from this. So seriously, if you've been thinking about maybe doing this, do it like this week because I've got a new program I'm launching in about 2 weeks from now that's going to be really centered around anger and the emotion and regulation of the emotion of anger. And so once that gets going, I don't know that I'm going to be able to offer this, probably have to be just like 1 day a week. So you might have to wait a few weeks before you get that call. So seriously, if you're thinking about doing that, now's the time to do it, like this week. Okay. And again, I don't get anything from this. I cover the cost. So there's no cost involved. I don't get anything from it. But if you're interested in this chat, then now's the time to do it. All right. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again tomorrow. And yeah, we're going to talk tomorrow about how the way we feel, it's very, very important to us, of course, but how it is perceived by others is not necessarily exactly what we think. And I'm going to tell you more about that tomorrow. So check it out. I wish you well. And don't forget to check out my other podcast called Learning to Surf with Adam Asdell. That is every week we drop a new episode. It's a more of a conversational thing between the two of us, talking about the science aspects and approach of mindfulness, and also the spiritual, religious, Buddhist approach to mindfulness. And it's really interesting. So Hope you get to enjoy that. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for watching. I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Take care.